Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote-unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp. And those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
Every Wednesday morning at this time, we check in with the only reporter-owned and operated newsroom that covers our nation's capital. That would be the Blacklock's reporter. Its managing editor is Tom Korski. Mr. Korski, good morning, sir.
Morning, Mike.
We were just talking about Bill C-2 on the show. So a couple of things that I know you're following at Blacklock's that I wanted to go a little bit further on. One of them, the powers that this bill would give our government to search our mail, Tom?
This is interesting. It goes all the way back to John A. Macdonald. There is a law, and it remains the law, that police cannot open mail in transit, and even postal inspectors cannot open a letter. And the logic was, for 158 years, this is private communication. It's none of the government's business. Police and other advocates, including First Nations, have asked for that law to be changed for many years because they have determined the post office is a leading conveyor. It is the shipper of choice for drug dealers. And the bill would change that and allow police to intercept mail in transit. It's going to be interesting, Mike, when it gets to committee, because I can tell you there will be libertarians and civil rights advocates who will say, okay, if the government can now intercept communications on paper, it's a very short step to then intercepting communications electronically. It's really an interesting aspect of that bill to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, you know, that connects directly to the angle we were sort of discussing C2 from in our earlier segment, and that is around immigration, caps on immigration, etc. And our guest thought there might be some comparisons right now here in Canada to what we're seeing in the United States with those ICE raids. And one of the statistics we, of course, discussed in that last segment is the reported 500,000 immigrants who are currently in Canada illegally. And the question has always been, Tom, what does Canada expect these immigrants to do? Leave voluntarily?
That's exactly what the new Minister of Immigration, Minister Diab, she's from Halifax, said in budget estimates exchanges with opposition MPs the other evening in the House of Commons. And she was asked that question many times. It's their estimate, by the way. This is not a conspiracy theory. We see that in Department of Immigration internal reports. They admit they do not know how many illegal immigrants are in the country. These are not just people who've crossed the border illegally, but, for instance, people on temporary permits, visitors, foreign students, whose permits expire. And the minister said, well, it's your job to leave the country. It's my expectation. How did she put it? Minister Diab said, anybody whose visa expired is expected to leave, end of quote. To which MP said, are you kidding me? I mean, you wouldn't enforce the Highway Traffic Act that way. You know, if you're speeding, Mike, I want you to, we're all running this on the honor system. I want you to go to the police station and pay your fine. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And that's our immigration system.
I'm sorry, officer. I went 6K over on my way to work today.
Honor system.
Karen Hogan is trying to keep us, the AG, honorable federally. And I don't think there was a lot to be surprised about in some of her reports yesterday.
What was interesting was on the ArriveCAN contractors. This was uncovered by MPs in parliamentary hearings, and they reached a certain point where they were confronted with destruction of documents. This is on the level. There were ArriveCAN managers, contractors, who had dealings with suppliers, and there, in one case, a laptop with presumably very relevant emails, was mysteriously destroyed, was corrupted. All the files were corrupted, just as the Commons Government Operations Committee was trying to get to those communications. What was interesting is there was no political interference in this. There is no evidence that any cabinet minister was pulling strings because I want my buddy up in Woodlawn, Ontario, to get this $20 million service fee contract. The bureaucracy made this up. There were managers, federal managers, who were taken out for drinks and meals by contractors. Mike, they were cutting up the cash. It was unbelievable. And that was the tone that came right from the top with the COVID-era spending. Feds borrowed and spent $500 billion. We know there is a class of COVID millionaires. They became rich on sole-sourced federal contracts. Unbelievable.
Yeah, the check and balance just wasn't there, was it?
And they were warned. There was a prosecutor from Quebec in the old Charbonneau Commission. That was the one that had 4 mayors resign over shenanigans in construction bids. And there was a former prosecutor, and he told them, he testified in committee, he said, you say this is an emergency and there's no time to cross T's and dot your I's. He said, you're wrong. This is exactly the time when this much money is going out the door. You must have real-time audits, and nobody listened, and here we are.
Tom, last week we joked, and we had to joke because if we didn't joke a little bit, we would cry. No budget in the spring. We're going to wait till the fall, and this comes home to roost again this week because, yes, a much publicized announcement from the Prime Minister this week around an increase to our defense spending, finally meeting those NATO targets, but goodness gracious me, how are we paying for it? And doesn't this make a budget that much more important right now?
That's exactly the point. And many MPs across the opposition, not just the Conservative Party, have said, when the Prime Minister says defense spending will go up 27%, but I can't tell you how we're going to pay for that, but I am also going to cut the operations budget, and you're going to get $10 daycare, and I'm cutting taxes, and it's going to be great. You know that's Big Rock Candy Mountain. You just know that that's a fantasy. That's a rainbow and a unicorn, and it's all going to come home to roost in 6 months when you get that budget. Wait for a big honking deficit, Mike.
I mean, bigger, honkinger than 62 billion?
Oh, once you've gone over budget targets by 55%, as they did last year, I mean, shoot the moon. Anything goes.
Tom, keep up the great work. Always enjoy the chats.
Thank you, Mike.
Tom Korski is the managing editor of the Blacklock's Reporter, the only reporter-owned and operated newsroom that covers our nation's capital. I strongly recommend you checking it out at blacklocks.ca. There's a modest subscription there, but you pay the subscription to keep the great work coming from the Blacklock's Reporter at blacklocks.ca. Tom joins us every Wednesday morning at 10 for a little look at Ottawa's business. We're going to shift gears from the feds to the province. A 23-day spring session. That's it? That's it. This is the Mike Farwell Show. We're talking about it next on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.